Dr. Emmett, thanks for coming on to the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here, and it's nice to meet you.
Thank you. And so I needed to prove to myself that there was another deeper aspect to life. And I did that. Quite remarkable performances like
Did
this,
you
but in a different plane.
did you say you studied your past lives?
Yes, I did.
How did you do
I
that?
spent I went to a clairvoyant who didn't charge money, and she worked with a spiritual figure called Sathya Sai Baba, who was alive in India at the time. But he worked with Beryl. If clairvoyants who want to extract material on the other side in the spiritual dimension need a helper there, and Sai Baba worked with Beryl to extract the material from the records, and they started showing me, and it was as real as looking at you here now. And they started showing me lives. Very interesting. Quite the images that I was seeing were quite real, quite brilliant. And I spent 2 years going through lots of my lives. Everybody's got them. We all have an invisible conscious side, a deeper conscious, which is part of us, but mostly we only contact that in sleep. Um, you know, people sleep, they dream. The dreams are often a communication with their higher conscious, which we all have. But the
Hmm.
details of this are quite obscure and unbelievable to a lot of people. So I've written a few books about it because I've always written and taught. I used to teach medical students and doctors and lectures as a professor in the university. And so I've always attempted to teach people things that would be useful to them.
How has knowledge of your own past lives been useful to you?
Oh, it's explained where a lot of influences have come from. You see, there are a lot of influences in your life that you're aware of, but you don't really know where they came from. And the lives they showed me were the ones that had influenced me in this life. You get feelings, feelings. It's not words. Mostly, I have an inner voice that talks to me, and I can prove I'm not mad.
Hmm.
But you get feelings, you hear words, and knowledge comes to you. When I was a small child in the North in World War II, my father was too busy, and in the 30s and 40s, we repaired everything. We didn't throw it away and buy a new one. You couldn't do that then. So we repaired them. And when I needed knowledge of how to do it, I just sat there and it would come to me. And I assumed everybody had this ability to just wait and let things come to you. And it's happened like that all my life. And the question was, where did it come from? So that's why I set about that investigation. I didn't come from a religious background. My father was an agnostic. He didn't believe any of the religious messages. So I investigated, and it's a fascinating story. My big educator was Sai Baba in India, and I went to see him 3 times, and I learned a very great deal, all of which was real.
That's fascinating. Um, how has this affected your, or do you have religious beliefs?
I don't go to church. I'm not a. I was brought up as a Christian. I am a Christian. I respect the teachings of Jesus, and I respect all of them. But they're all talking about the same thing. There's only one God, but there are many religions, and they all seem to have had felt the need to fight with each other over the centuries, which is very sad, because if as a species we could learn forgiveness, it would change the world, and it benefits each of us. If you hold anger and bitterness and hatred in your um, mind, every cell in your body is conscious and alive. And if you're holding those things, you um, affect the cells in your body. And the immune system, which normally picks up disease and deals with it, or early cancers, if you are holding anger and bitterness in your conscious and unconscious mind, um, it doesn't work so well and you're prone to illness. A lot of cancers are related to people holding bitterness and anger. Um, so if you can forgive, if you could teach the world to forgive, if instead of fighting each other and killing, look at the wars now, if they could all forgive each other, it would be so much better for them individually and for the world. You know, this overcrowded world we've got needs to cool down, but it's not only in the heat, it's also in your unconscious mind. You are quite powerful. And in your unconscious mind, if you carry love and forgiveness, it makes a big difference to each of us individually and to the world, because there is a spirit in the world as well. And everything is conscious, you know. One of the things I found out is that, every cell in your body is individually conscious and it has a memory of what you were before. We all were something before, and now, and we live, our body lives and our dies, but our spirit, our soul, is immortal. It wasn't born, and so it doesn't have to die. As a surgeon, I would look under the microscope at tissues I'd removed, for example, a cancer, and I would see how the cells related to each other, and that would tell me stories. Now, every cell in your body is multiplying. You, in fact, replace your complete body every 7 years, which is quite fascinating. And
Mhm.
the thoughts that you carry in your mind affect the cell population in your body.
Okay.
Consciousness is the big invisible thing that runs the whole show, you know.
Right. Like, what is consciousness? That's an interesting concept.
um, Consciousness is invisible. It comes with creation. The creator who put it together is linked to it in consciousness. Um, we have different levels of consciousness. We have the what we are conscious with. It's like an iceberg. Picture an iceberg. There is 15% of the iceberg floating above the water. The other 85% is your unconscious mind, your subconscious, your higher conscious, which links you in with the higher consciousness of all that is, which is called God by religions and societies. And we are connected in our deeper consciousness. Our real meaning and who we are lies in our deeper consciousness.
Mm.
Um, Consciousness is the energy of life in all things, your life force. You have a life force, you're out on your sailing boat. Your life force is very important. And it is in part of your deeper unconscious. We all have a deeper unconscious which connects with our soul, spirit, which connects with higher consciousness that is the spirit in the world, the spirit in everything. It
To what
connects everything.
to what degree do you think that we are all connected together and connected to the spirit or the creator?
Oh, completely. It's just that it's at a level that our conscious mind can't connect with. It works, it all is a matter of frequency. In the conscious mind, we're working at a relatively lower frequency. As you get up in these levels, the frequency increases. Um, we don't have a machine that can measure consciousness, and we don't have because science can't measure it, it can't analyze it, and therefore it can't say it exists. But people do, and I spent a couple of years doing this quite a while ago when I was retraining as an artist.
You spent a time measuring consciousness. Is that what you were saying?
No, you can't measure consciousness except by experiencing it. Um, Consciousness at the different levels. For example, your subconscious is now well accepted after the work of Jung and Freud. We use our subconscious every day without realizing it. It's a ready reference aid. For example, you learn to walk, you learn to play golf, you learn to high dive. Well, now the details of all those movements are recorded in your subconscious and you call on them when you need it. You get up and walk. But if you're in hospital quite a long time, you forget how to walk. You have to relearn. And as you relearn, you file it in your subconscious and call on it when you need it. The subconscious is a very useful piece of equipment that we carry in our mind, but it's the part of the unconscious in our mind. There's a lot that we have that is unconscious.
Yes. I'm wondering if you've been able to tap into your subconscious, been able to observe it or to look at it.
Um, my everyday conscious really can't do that. Its frequency is too low. It's at a higher frequency.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have an instrument where I can turn the dial and raise the frequency of my thoughts. Nevertheless, it's there. We use it, and we use it all the time. When you go to sleep and you dream, you may have noticed when you wake up after dreaming, unless you write it down straight away, it disappears. And the
Mm-hmm.
reason is it's at a different frequency. So I used to keep a pad with a moonlight pen. The light was in the pen itself. So I could write down things in the middle of the night um,
Mm.
before they disappeared. And the reason for that is it's at a different frequency. And
Mm.
as you go higher in your unconscious levels, the frequency increases and you can't go to it. It has to come to you. That's why people ask and wait. And I grew up with a source that would come to me when I needed it. And we all have this.
How
It's
how
just that,
can mhm.
yes.
How can those of us that have not experienced that experience it? Is there a way for us to tap into that?
Um, I think if you just look out for it, you'll find that it comes. Everybody's got this. It's just that a lot of people are not aware of it.
What do we look for?
I sorry.
What do we look out for? How do we notice it?
Um, just be aware and relax.
Okay.
And in the case of meditation, which or mindfulness that people call it now, if you just put your mind on hold and let what will come to you. It'll come. But you have to be in an accepting state when it
Hmm.
does come. When I used to get into my deeper unconscious with meditation, I would first of all relax comfortably, sitting upright and I would go to a familiar place. And I used to go to a spot on a lake I knew. And when I was there and getting into it, a vision would appear of a large structure on the other bank. It always came and it was always the same. And from there, I would go into other avenues. Fascinating. It works.
You close your eyes when you meditate?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. You don't want to focus on what's in the room around you. You need to dissociate yourself from what's the immediate present,
Hmm.
because you're going to a different level of consciousness. You're
Hmm.
changing the frequency in your deeper awareness.
Ah, okay. I meditate almost every day, and I sit on the bow of my boat, but I don't close my eyes. So maybe I'll try that next time.
Oh, yes. And you must be comfortable and sitting upright and just be aware that there is another world that you're connecting into. It's
Hmm.
another level of consciousness. So
Hmm.
I've written a few books on this I used to write surgical articles, surgical books, and I've written various books on levels of consciousness as I've been shown it.
Hmm.
I, I went 3 times to India. Sai Baba had been helping me in spirit in my unconscious mind, and I went to learn more, and I did. Life is a process of constant learning, but we don't leave it behind when the body dies. We take it with us because it's in our unconscious and conscious mind. But the big part is your unconscious mind that runs your body and associates your relationship with your higher conscious soul.
Okay. So aside from meditation, how else can we nurture our subconscious? Do right by our subconscious.
Be aware that what you carry in your deeper thoughts, consciousness, affects your body and it transmits. Telepathy has been practiced by different societies. It works. You probably have had the thought about somebody and you ring them up and you find they've been thinking about you. In this society, we relegate much that we used to do ourselves to the electronics. This electronic age, you pick up a phone, you look at it. I'm looking at you on you're on the other side of the world. It's pretty good. But there are a lot of things in our lives that we relegate to the subconscious or the deeper conscious. And um, you don't have to be aware of it, but you can learn a lot by being aware. And in this overcrowded world that we're part of today, if people could forgive each other, and this is one of the functions of your mind, what you hold in your mind affects your health. If you hold happiness and laughter, you broadcast that to all the cells in your body, and your immune system will function much better. You will have much less chance of getting cancer or various other diseases. There was a man called Cousins who was in hospital, told he wouldn't recover, and he started watching funny films, and they would do blood tests before and after. Having been told he couldn't recover, he then did recover by the mechanism of broadcasting happiness to the cells of his body. And you can do that. And I talk about a lot of things like that in these books. And in an interview like this, for example, your everyday reality for yourself. When you are born as an embryo, a small child just born, your everyday conscious comes into being, and that you accept as the reality for your life. But there is more. But it's like you're bringing your records with you in an unconscious aspect of your mind. Fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Yes. What do you think the purpose of reincarnation is? I assume you believe in reincarnation. Why do you think that that's the system?
Because you can't learn it all in one life. How long do you live here? You live and you die. We come here to learn. And making mistakes is part of learning. Look around the world, they're all making mistakes. But you can't, the complex personality that you are didn't arrive from just one life. You've had many lives. I've had many lives. And the story of what you were before is really quite fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And what you'll be next time. And I mean, your body will die, God knows how. It's intriguing the number of ways you can die. And but you'll be back. But you spend a period of time in the other dimension. See, it's all the frequency of vibration in the particles of the atom that determine dimension. It's all based on frequency, and so what you were in your previous life has an influence on what you're doing and thinking and wanting.
Can you give us an example of one of your past lives and how it has affected your life today?
Yes, I've had a few German lives, and I started doing German at school, and I was amazed at how I was attracted to the language. I've been a writer in previous lives, and I've been I've done medicine in previous lives, and the combination of what you've done previously has an effect on what you want to be, what you want to do. This comes to you from your unconscious mind, and it comes through the subconscious into the conscious. It's an influence there. So knowing a little bit about it, you don't have to, and it's quite intriguing.
One thing I'm very curious about world religions, and I've studied Buddhism a little bit, most of which, I mean, pretty much all of which, what you've said fits into the Tibetan Buddhism that I've studied. But one thing I'm curious about, I'm always trying to like find ways that two different religions talk about the same issue. And one thing I've wondered is that if the Christian concept of original sin might be related to our past lives.
It depends whether it's New Testament or Old Testament. The
Ah,
Old Testament was the old Jewish Bible, which was a much more severe view of things. Jesus Christ himself was much more gentle, forgiving, and I don't think he talked about original sin. I think that's the Old Testament, which was the
okay,
Jewish Bible.
okay.
Um, I don't think myself that there's such a thing.
Hmm.
I think the early Christians were Jews. They were treated very badly by the Roman Empire for the first 300 years. After that, Constantine allowed them to be one of the many religions of the Roman Empire. But it wasn't till Justinian in about 536 or something who did a deal with 5 different Christian sects and put them together and made the State Church of Rome. This is Eastern Rome in Constantinople. Western
Mhm.
Rome at that time had been conquered by the Visigoths and the Goths and etc. But so Constantine set it up in Constantinople, the State Church of Rome, the Roman Catholic Church. Now, in order to increase the power of the church, he said there was no such thing as reincarnation, and to mention that was a heresy. And they treated heresy very severely. So people stopped talking about having previous lives. The early Christians believed they'd been before and would come again. They thought John the Baptist and Jesus were reincarnations of Elisha and Elijah. Uh, but all of that was wiped when they developed the official Church of Rome.
Mhm.
And uh, so, original sin, I don't believe there's such a thing.
Mhm. I was thinking along the lines of karma. If you carried bad karma from a previous life, maybe that's what they were talking about as original sin. Do you believe in karma?
I believe that what we have done is filed in the Akashic records. And if we have done some particularly nasty things, we may have to work that off in some way or other. On the other hand, if you've done very nice things and good things for other people, you will benefit from that in your fresh you get offered when you're on the other side. You get offered a life scenario with a degree of destiny, karma, whatever, and the purpose is that you can have a series of lives and get better, and the previous lives will have an influence on the way you think, act, what you want to do, be, and all this filters through your higher consciousness.
Hmm.
So I think uh, you should think of the good side of it, that you benefit from
Mhm.
the influence of what you've been. And some of those little things you want to do, and you don't know why you want to do them, are filtering through from what you've been. You can't build up to the life. The human life is too short. Sometimes it's shorter than you think it'll be. Sometimes it's a bit longer than you think it'll be.
Yes. Um,
Yes.
do you think we have a purpose in life? That do you think when we selected this life, do you think we selected it with a purpose in mind, and that now we have a purpose
Oh,
to
yes.
fulfill?
Oh, yes. And you're working it through. But that's all in your unconscious mind.
Hmm.
What you have in your daily conscious, everyday conscious, is just 15%. The real stuff is your real meaning, your real identity lies in your unconscious mind.
Hmm.
Fascinating.
Yes. Um, do you think that we have a sort of a set time that we're going to die, and that we're not going to go before that?
You come with an original destiny, but you can alter that.
Hmm.
And if you want to live longer, you can. Um, you, you will not pass from this dimension to the next one without agreeing to it.
Hmm.
My voice within informs me about a lot of things. There was a fellow, um, a South African guy, his son had died in an accident. And this guy was a lawyer, and one of his old clients rang him up and wanted him to go and see him. And the son who died was contacting the father through this clairvoyant. And what the son said is that in that dimension that he was in, the frequency of the thinking and communicating was much higher, and to get down to the earth level was very difficult. But doing it through a clairvoyant, you don't have to get the level quite so low as to be intelligible in the mind of an ordinary human. And what this guy said to his father, the the family had been very much lamenting, and he felt that on the other side, and he asked them, please stop all that moaning and being unhappy, because he was feeling it. Would they please just send him love in the other dimension? But the key point, I suppose, was that to get from the thoughts in the next level that you go to, another dimension, the world, the universe is only one. There are other dimensions around. Multidimensionality is one of the things that we don't understand, but it's true. That's where spacecraft come from, other dimensions. But they have to be visible in this dimension, they have to change frequency. Our science, our society doesn't understand this. There's a limit to what you can show humans in their present format, because they'll start using it for fighting. I mean, drones were originally just a way of taking photos from up there. Now they've become a full-fledged weapon loaded with this and that. And we do this with everything. It's time we learned that forgiveness is better than fighting. If we could just forgive, it makes us healthier and happier, and it makes the world a better place. The world desperately, if you look around, needs to learn forgiveness.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. Well, I had an experience that maybe you could help me analyze, and this is part of what I've been asking you in the last couple of questions. But I basically drowned once. I lost consciousness while freediving. Well, I lost consciousness while I was underwater, and I was alone. And I immediately had a dream, and then I woke up on the surface, blind and confused and disoriented. But anyway, I had a very vivid dream that I still remember, and it was me talking to somebody else. I couldn't see who I was talking to, but I could see myself in the dream. And I was just looking at somebody and nodding my head, and they were telling me something that was obviously important. And then I came to on the surface of the water, and I survived. But I felt like I had gone to the other side and come back.
I
and
would
I've always wondered
suspect
about that.
Yes, well, there is a lot of literature. What you had is called a near-death experience, and there is a lot of literature on that. And there was a doctor who I refer to in my book, who started analyzing this, because she discovered a lot of people with experiences like yours, but very similar. And she realized that this was in fact what happens, that when you cross over to the next dimension, you often, for example, a friend of mine died from hemorrhage after having a child, and later she was resuscitated. But in her mind over there, she was offered the choice that she could stay there. And over there, there's a lovely feeling of happiness, love, beauty. She was offered the choice to stay there or to come back, but she knew she had family of young children here who needed her, so she came back. But she was offered the choice, and a lot of people are under that circumstance. There's a great body of literature, which I quote in this book, with experiences like the one you had. And I would say what you had was a real experience, a near-death experience, and you have come back. Often you come back with a purpose, and it may be that what you're doing now is part of the purpose that you came back for.
I definitely felt like I came back with a purpose, and I felt that writing
Yes,
was part of that purpose.
yes, and
Writing
this,
books.
and if you look at my book, you will find many references to people who had near-death experience. I quote some of them at length because it's quite a fascinating thing we can all learn from. This book I've written is really to teach people how to manage this kind of event in their life.
What's the title of the book?
It's called Your Unique Consciousness, because each of us, when we're born, we get a level of consciousness as our everyday conscious with the associated deeper unconscious. And it's quite, it's like a one-off code. It's a unique consciousness for you for this life.
That's all that's fascinating. Can you tell us more about what's in the book?
Oh, yes. Well, I talk about the levels of consciousness we're born with. One of the reasons I wrote the book was for people to become aware of their real identity and meaning. That we're not just an animal body. That we have a deeper consciousness which contains our soul meaning, and it contains what we've learned in previous lives and what we'll add to it with this life. And we the levels of consciousness we use, the subconscious is a great level to learn about. It was originally described by Freud and then Jung. Jung talked about the universal unconscious, how in our deeper conscious level we are connected to all things, but it's at different frequencies, and that's why we may not be able to do it. But you get into this to a degree with sleep, and I talk about different levels of consciousness and how you can use it to your advantage, and how by understanding these things, you can lead a better life, benefit yourself and the world more. For example, everything is conscious. This world has a consciousness. And in addition to the fact that there are too many of us alive at the present time, and we're burning too much, and every time we fire a shell at somebody, that adds to the heat in the world. And every time you go on a cruise boat or a jet plane flight to the other side of the world, you're adding to it. In 1950, when I was a first year medical student, our professor of zoology told us that the world had an epidemic population of humans, and it then had 2 billion people in 1950. Today, as we speak, it's got 8 billion people. And so we need to think cool, don't he? Because your thoughts are real, they affect everything. And with 8 billion people angry about you're heating up the climate of thought. There's a mood of anger sweeping the world. Look at the news. Everybody's complaining about something. We should just be happy. And this
Mm-hmm.
is important for the way it affects the planet. We're dealing with a hot planet, and it's getting hotter. And so we can cool it by thinking better thoughts, because your thoughts are not, consciousness radiates. You thoughts of anger and hatred affect the environment in ways we cannot see and can't measure.